Kim. I'm usually behind the camera, but for this little lesson, I'm gonna do it because I love composting. It's one of my big passions. I didn't always think about composting, but it's funny. I have to give a shout out to my grade 3 teacher, Mrs. Riley Gibb, because in grade 3 we had a worm compost in our classroom, and it's funny, when I started learning more about soil and realizing how important soil life was, I was thinking back and saying thank you to her for all those first lessons. But the reason why composting and worm composting is so exciting is when you start learning about what is actually helping a plant grow, you find out that it's not the dirt, it's not the minerals in the dirt that are feeding your plant. It's actually all the soil life. It's all the microbes, the fungi, the bacteria, the little tiny insects and things. They're the ones eating the organic material in your soil and like pooping it out, eating it out, and that is how your plant roots get their nutrients. So it's not directly from, if you just had dirt and a plant, it would not grow very well. It's all the life in the soil that's contributing to this huge web of different interactions that we don't even understand all of it yet. And I learned a lot of this. This is one of my favorite books. It's called Teeming with Microbes. And it's absolutely fascinating. Once you start learning about soil and you realize it's just like the universe, there is so much we don't know about what's under our feet. And once you start learning about it, it kind of blows your mind. There's, in 1 teaspoon of soil, over 1 billion different bits of soil life, of microbes, of bacteria and fungi. And that's in good soil. That's in healthy soil that's going like crazy. So the best way that we can compost right now, because our compost outside is frozen, is composting inside. And you can do that with worms. So exactly a month ago, I posted on our Facebook page this worm bin that I set up. And it's a little demonstration bin, that's why it's clear. It's not great to have a clear bin because worms don't like light. But I wanted to show that you can make a worm bin literally out of any bin you have. And this is an old CD carrying case, which I don't need. So all you have to do is poke some holes in the top. I just did it with a regular pair of scissors. And you can see in my previous pictures, all I did was I put in shredded paper, food compost from the kitchen, so just probably like 1 pound or less of kitchen scraps, a little bit of dirt from my floor, and a little bit of sawdust and coffee grinds, and then I wetted it and mixed it all up and added the worms. So it was just shredded paper and food waste, and look, a month later, this is really neat because we can see how long it takes to compost. So here's what we've got 1 month later.
Wow.
Whoa, look at that.
Wow, yeah.
Wow. I'm so surprised. I did not think it would compost this fast.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing?
That's amazing.
And these worms I had kind of neglected, so they weren't doing great. Wow, look at that.
Yeah.
And the other thing about your worm so what I did was I filled this bin up and then I completely forgot about it for a month. I left it in my closet. So you do not have to manage your worms every day. And this is a really cool example of how a well-built worm compost can be incredibly productive. Now this stuff, they love corn on the cob, because they use it as their little home.
Like the coral reef.
Yeah, like a coral reef, totally. Wow, look at them.
Yeah.
This is the best worm bin I've ever made, and I literally did it that one day and then left it.
Wow.
So I'll show you quickly how to harvest your compost. And this is important because this is all, so it used to be food. Now this is all worm castings, aka worm poop. But this is amazing stuff to use for starting your seedlings when you're starting those tender plants, because it's really rich in in all kinds of nutrients. And of course, the most important thing is that it's rich in microbial life. This soil is just teeming with, like, we can see the worms. Oh, okay, there's worms. But that's just a tiny window into what's actually in here. So I'm gonna dump it out. Okie-dokie. I'm so impressed.
Yeah.
Because it was a lot of kitchen scraps that I put in there. I didn't know. I thought it would take way longer. Look at them all. They're doing so good too. Now these are a special species of worm. It's not the worm that's in your garden. That's right now hibernating down in the soil. These are red wigglers, they're called. And it's a type of worm that doesn't like digging deep down. They only like to stay in nature in the leaf litter.
Okay.
And so for that reason, they don't survive outside. So if I had these in my outdoor worm compost, or my outdoor compost, they would all die by now. But this is why you can keep it inside. I just keep it in a closet. I have to show you the absolute best book ever. This lady, Mary Applehoff, is amazing. And she kind of started this huge trend of building worm bins in classrooms. And in her book, this book is excellent if you want to know anything about worm composting. But her worm bin is literally her living room coffee table.
Wow.
Because she shows it off to everybody who comes in. She loves it. So it's that kind of thing of people always want to hide their compost. But when you do that, if this worm bin was far away in a corner of my basement, I would never use it. I would never do anything. But when it's kind of like in your home and you're showing people, you're more likely to take good care of it. This book is excellent. And so I'll show you how to start a fresh one.
Okay.
What we use is shredded paper. There we go. And everybody has some paper in their house. You don't have to have a big shredder. You could just literally just chop it up with scissors. Your mail, you know, your old envelopes. Okay. Now, next we will put in another thing everybody has, which is coffee grinds. Do not throw away your coffee grinds. They can be used as soil. What is it, Jackie? Like 1/3?
Oh, 1/3. It doesn't even need to be composted.
You don't have to compost it, but worms love it. So, and we have lots of it.
That's right.
If we could get all our gas stations to
Yes.
save their coffee grinds, there's actually a lot of coffee plantations, and other places have side farms that are just worm farms, and they eat all the residue off of the coffee plantation and coffee grinds. And some places, like, you can literally, I'm going to show you a variety of stuff to feed your worms, but you could just have coffee grinds and worms and
paper coffee grinds
and paper. Yeah, you don't have to have a big variety. Okay, so that's the coffee grinds. And now I'll show you the good old kitchen scraps. So the one thing we want to remember about worms is that they're vegans. And they do not eat meat. And they do not like oil or cheese. But they love the stuff that, you know, the old vegetables. And going back to my classroom worm compost bin with Miss Riley Jib, we had a special food processor that was the worms food processor. And so we would take all the lunch scraps from lunch and put them into this special food processor and grind them right up. And that's because the more surface area, you could throw a whole, actually this I put whole pears in that were kind of moldy without doing anything to them. It will just take them longer to break it down. But if you crunch it right up, crunch everything up, if I chopped this up finer or in a blender, it would compost a lot quicker. So
I see.
If you want to, but you do not have to. Okay, so that's the kitchen scraps. Next is that I'll put a little bit of, this is just wood waste from cutting wood, firewood. So you can put that in. And then the other thing everybody has is literally just a bit of dirt. A bit of dirt you swept up from your floor. And the worms need dirt. because they don't have teeth. So when they're eating food, they need to grind it up in their stomach just like a chicken would.
Oh.
So you need a little bit of dirt.
They need grit. Okay.
Yeah, you need some grit. And so
Okay.
that's good. Now the other thing we need is parts of this are wet and parts are dry. I'm gonna add some water. It's quite cold because it's pond water. But I don't want to use water that's been trucked from my house or from your house because that's got chlorine in it. So just like the chlorine is meant in drinking water to kill bacteria, it will kill the soil life in here. So we want to, as much as possible, try and use natural water.
So if you melted snow, then you could use that too?
Totally.
Okay.
Just bring in a bit of snow, melt it on your fire stove, or just in your house. And now so the moisture that we want is not wet. We don't want to see water pooling, but we don't want it to feel dry. So what they say is that you want it to be wet like a wrung out sponge, so moist. And that's because the worms have delicate skin, and they will dry right out if your worm bin is too dry, and if it's too wet, they'll drown.
Okay.
So that's it. And now what we do is we can harvest the worm compost. You see the worms have disappeared. And that's because they don't like light. So they move away from light. And then it's very easy to harvest the compost. You just pull it off the top because there's no worms in it anymore.
I see.
And then we'll put it in
A container.
we'll save it for starting our seedlings. So we'll harvest the now if I find a worm, I'll put it in its new house.
Oh.
So here we go.
Do worms like watermelon?
They love watermelon. They'll love it. Now, watermelon is quite wet, though. So if you put watermelon in, also like cucumber, you want to add some shredded paper or something that's dry to soak up all the wet. Because if your worm bin does get too wet, they will not like that at all. Look at all that. I cannot believe how well
it's beautiful.
they composted so quick. And you can see the only things left are bits of plastic and seeds.
Husks,
Husks.
We have one more question. So where are the worms available? Someone's wondering about how to get worms.
How to get worms. A lot of people so when in 2013 I bought 1 pound of worms, $70 from Dirt Willie outside of Edmonton, and that little handful of worms has probably made at least 100 worm bins across the Northwest Territories. So I think the best way to find worms in your community is to put a post on your community announcements page and just ask, does anybody have a worm bin? And could I have some worms? A lot of schools have worm bins, and a lot of people have a worm bin, and all you need to start is just a few.
Let's see how many.
Okay, well there's 2 there.
There's 2, so maybe a few more than that?
Yeah, a few more than that, maybe just 10.
Okay.
And
so would you have worms that you could share from this?
Totally, yeah, for sure. If anybody wants worms, they can contact us. Also in Yellowknife, Ecology North has composting worms.
Okay.
So first I would say ask your community.
Right.
Some gardeners might have some. And then second, ask some organizations. If there's like an ecological organization in your town, they might have worms for sale or to share.
Yeah.
And schools. A lot of schools have worm bins. And maybe right now they're looking for someone to take care of them.
Yeah, right.
The other cool thing, I want to show you this other book that I love. And I know a lot of people right now are homeschooling. So there's a lot of really great books about using worms in your lessons with your kids. And so this is for a classroom, but right now your home might be your classroom.
Right.
And having a worm bin can feed into all kinds of cool things. You can put it into science classes and even just like understanding a routine to take care of something. And there's all kinds of good lessons and great little like questionnaires and things to do with lids.
Yeah.
So you can. So that's a great use of a worm bin too, is for your kids.
One librarian, librarian has said that some of these books they have in the library system.
No way.
Yeah, so that's really cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And we have such a great library system in the NWT where you can you can order online from other libraries and they'll bring it in for you.
Yeah.
So that's great. So search for Mary Applehoff.
Okay.
And the Worm Cafe is the one about with the lesson plans, but there's a few other lesson plan ones. So
Awesome.
wow, this is fun.
Yeah.
Because, it's easy to harvest. There's other ways to harvest your worms and your worm compost. Like there's all kinds of methods.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is like you could not feed them for a while and then feed them in one corner. Some really delicious stuff like the watermelon.
Yeah.
And they'll all go to that corner and then you can just pull out from that side.
I see.
You don't have to be perfect. It's just like whatever you need. Like we want to start some seeds, right? So we just need enough to start our seeds and then we can put some back.
Right.
There's a little guy.
Little baby.
A little one. So worms.
Yeah.
The cool thing about worms is that they're hermaphrodites.
I
Every single one of them can lay eggs, but they need a partner. So you do need more than one. And they got to find each other, and they lay one egg, each of them, every week.
Oh.
So I did not have this many worms
I see.
back when I started this worm bin.
Wow.
But when you feed them well, they get really active, and you can really quickly grow your worm population. And some good ways of accelerating it is to add worms from different worm bins. So if you had a few friends who had worm bins, you could share.
I see.
And that might get them like hopped up.
I see.
Just like we're going to a party.
Yeah.
See different people. That's more fun.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
and worm eggs are really easy to find too, which is kind of fun.
Okay. And they look like just little clear.
They look like little jewels.
Okay.
Little small jewels. So if I find one, I'll
So
tell
nice
you.
and crumbly.
Isn't it beautiful?
Wow.
So all the good things about this is that when you're starting your seedlings, it will really hold moisture well because you can see how moist it is. It'll absorb that and hold it so you don't have to water your seedlings as much. It also has all the nutrients in it. It also is like a nice consistency. It's not compact,
Right. So another question is they're just wanting to know is, again, how long did it take for that to turn into this?
You can scroll down on our Facebook page and see when I made the bin.
Yeah.
It was literally 1 month ago. So I think I'd set up their new bin is it April? It's April.
Yeah.
March 14th is when I made this bin. So it took just 4 weeks.
There you go.
That's it, turn kitchen compost into this.
Right.
So if you say you don't have any soil, well, let's make some.
That's right.
Don't throw out those coffee grinds.
Yeah.
And food waste that goes into the garbage is the absolute worst. Because, first of all, it's not garbage. It's nutrients that we should put back into the living system. But also, this is why I got so interested in composting in the first place. When food waste goes into the landfill, it is what creates the methane gas. And it creates leachate. So it will create liquid that will pull toxins off of the metals and plastics and stuff in the landfill out into our water systems. And it will create the terrible gas that is contributing to climate change. So by taking food out of the waste stream and back into our gardening, it's win-win-win because we're helping out our local landfill, we're helping out our water, our air, and our plants. So food's not waste.
Perfect. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Is that good, Kim?
I think that's
all
good.
Right,
yeah.
thank you,
So
everyone.
I love answering questions about compost and worms. So if you want to keep asking questions in the comments, I'll go and answer them later. But happy worm composting, everybody.
And we will see and have some that we can share from this too.
I have a few more worm bins. I have a lot of worms. So
good.
Yeah, so no worries.
Okay, so
press
someone's
N.
asking, it's okay, just if we could have, they're talking about sharing already. So, okay, bye-bye, everybody.
Okay, bye-bye.